Hey, Tasha, how are you?
Hey, Sharon, I'm good. How are you?
Well, today I get to tell you I'm coming live from Maryland today. Good.
We still got to do a wave.
Oh, we got to do a wave because I still can't see you, but it feels so good. It feels so good to be coming from Maryland today. How are you?
Watch party started.
Oh, look at you on it.
Yes.
A second. I'm so excited. Listen, I'm so excited to say hi to you and say that I'm in Maryland that I forgot that I should be starting a watch party myself. But
what are you doing in Maryland?
Well, as if you don't know, but for all those and for anyone who might be joining us or who will be joining us, my cousin is entering the world of home ownership. And, you know, because of COVID, our family hasn't really been able to connect. And I thought it was just important to come up and support her. And especially when becoming a first-time homeowner. I know what that's like. And listen, I know how I run my mother ragged when I purchase a house or buy furniture. Heck, I run my family ragged. So she hasn't had that support. So I wanted to be here to support her. And it's been fun.
Well, kudos to you.
I love my fam.
Let's introduce ourselves to our audience. People are joining on. Let us know where you're coming in from.
Yes, let us know. So today, today we're going to talk about something that truly impacts, got to be just about everybody, right? Which is how all of this is impacting us. When Tasha and I were talking about this week, we were like, yeah, y'all gonna make me lose my mind up in here. Now, I'm the one who knows the hip hop music. Tasha is not. We're friends anyway. And so,
but whose idea was the title for this week?
Absolutely, it was yours, my friend.
You may have the DMX voice and knew who sang the song, but listen, I knew.
Yeah. Yes, you knew the hook for sure. So let's talk about how was your week and how are you feeling with all the COVID? Listen, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a student, you're an accountability partner, you like to work out, you like to stay healthy. How are you managing it all? How are you doing?
I am keeping my head above water. I will say that. You know, it's been a tough maybe last 4 weeks.
Okay.
I think for me, I think when the seasons change and we get into the fall, I'm always looking for a change, something new, something fresh. And I feel like because of the pandemic, we're at the same place I've been since March. And
yeah, that's a problem. That's a challenge.
Are you there?
I'm here. You kind of froze up on me. Uh-oh.
We're having some connection challenges.
I think we are. I mean, you're okay now. Can you hear me? You are frozen. Okay. So I'll keep. Tasha, can you hear me?
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now. Yes, you had frozen up there.
You're frozen over there.
All right. So this is a first for us. Because right now, all right. So
are you with me now?
I am with you. Can you hear me, Tasha? Okay. So Tasha is going to leave the studio right now. And then we are going to just give Tasha a minute to come back. But one of the things that we've been talking about is just how to manage our mental health and spirit. And when Tasha comes back, we'll talk about the very real conversation that she and I had in just trying to be really perceptive about our energy being off. And Tasha and I probably work out about 3 days a week and we go for a virtual walk. I'm in North Carolina. She's in Maryland. We get on our phones and we talk and we walk for about a couple miles, so maybe about an hour or so, 45 minutes or so. And we had a real honest conversation about our energies being off. And Tasha and I talk so much that we can feel when our energies are off. And so so we had to say, okay, how do we address this, right? We're accountability partners. So I acknowledged her just for being really open and honest and sharing her feelings about how she was dealing with stuff, which allowed me to say, yeah, I think I've been a little off too. I think I've been a little spicy to some people sometime. And so that's been a little difficult. And so we decided that, it's going to be an effort for us, but we're just going to focus on gratitude, being in a great space, being in a great place, and being thankful, because it can always be so much worse. But what I'm going to do now is, here comes Tasha. Let's see.
Well, that was strange.
That was strange. Girl, you had me out here dancing like I'm Michael Jackson with 4 brothers behind me. And
That's never happened before. I'm sorry.
Jesus had me out here. So,
but listen, you're experienced in television and used to being able to hold it down like that. Right?
The show continues, but I was just talking about how when we had to have our talk about what we were feeling, and so you can tell your perspective on our talk this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna put you out there. I felt like Sean was being mean to me, and I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you? I mean, super snappy, just short, and I'm like, did I do something wrong? But then she's telling me stories about, work and other people, so it's not just me. And I'm just like, girl, listen, what is it? Because you're not being very nice right now.
Wait. First of all, I don't remember the conversation going.
You don't remember that part?
Well, that was a whole nother day.
I think this is how it started, though. And then we realized, right? I was also, not just you, but I was also talking about how I haven't been the nicest person or the easiest.
Thank you, accountability partner, because you guys really, thank you. I appreciate it. Because, okay, thank you for that.
Recognizing that in myself.
Yay.
And we both agreed, right, that when we did our abundance challenge last month or month before last, or so, that we were in a different space, right? And so we really just needed to change our perspective and our focus, get back to the abundance and gratitude every day, and let that be how we start our day, and it will carry out and be great for everybody else around us.
Yes. That's what I remembered.
Oh, okay.
That's where it was. But anyway, we have an amazing guest joining us today, Dr. Carolyn J. Howell, who is a psychiatrist. Let's just go into her background a bit, Tasha.
Okay. Dr. Howell is a DC native. Nice.
Go get it.
She's always dreamed of being a healer, even from a child. I thought that was very interesting. She attended Spelman College and ultimately matriculated at Howard University, where she received her medical degree. She graduated in the top 10% of her class.
Okay.
Yeah. And we know one of her classmates, Kendra.
Yes, Kendra. Dr. Kendra.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she completed her residency at George Washington University. She has a specialty in early and recent onset schizophrenia.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, but she's passionate about helping people heal and thrive. She has tenured 3 medical directorships in her career. Currently, she works as the lead child psychiatrist at the Early Psychosis Intervention Clinic. She also serves as medical director at Outpatient Mental Health Services for the Children's Guild. Okay. And she runs her own private practice.
Okay, I'm about to say, because you got a whole lot. So we have a real serious player. So let's bring Dr. Howell into this. Dr. Howell, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that warm introduction. I'm so happy to be among you ladies talking about this today.
Oh, we need you. So many people need to hear what you have to say.
Indeed.
Maybe Tasha and I need you.
We all need each other. We all need each other.
So Dr. Howell, we're watching the news. We're just living life in the United States right now, right? So Tasha and
Yeah.
I earlier this week. I mean, we have political burnout, we have social activism burnout,
Mhm.
COVID burnout, gotta wear a mask, social distance burnout. If you're a parent, you are a parent and a teacher. I mean, there are people who've lost their job. It is just an overwhelming time right now, right?
Yep.
And
Yes.
looked at reports that are saying that many people, 64% of people who responded to a survey found that they are feeling pressed and a level of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm. So that's absolutely true. The CDC actually reported on this as well, and they found that there's been a significant increase in depressive symptoms and anxiety symptoms among people, starting around late June in particular. And the increase was compared to the same time of year in 2019. So they did a study and they looked at respondents' scores regarding these types of symptoms, and 40% reported at least one adverse mental health condition. And
Yeah.
the most common of these has been depression and anxiety. And anxiety is a big umbrella term that can be inclusive of various types of specific anxiety disorders, but this relates to even trauma-related anxiety illness. People have, basically a trauma response to this pandemic. But also alarming is the fact that suicide rates have gone up too.
Mm.
And unfortunately, it affects more considerably the age group between 18 and 24, and then minorities and people that are non-paid caregivers also.
Yeah.
And then mandated workers. So in my practice specifically, it mirrors what the CDC reported, particularly around anxiety. I mean, let's just take, for example, obsessive compulsive disorder. You might have someone that already had like obsessive thoughts about germs or contamination, and then the pandemic hits, and these thoughts, these obsessive thoughts are intensified, or the compulsion to wash their hands are intensified, while there's such a universal focus on washing hands and wearing masks. So that's just one example.
Mm.
Wow. I actually, it's interesting you said that. I have a friend who's a bit OCD, and he's got a daughter who's OCD.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he's trying to manage because he wants all the kids to practice safe habits.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing that in his daughter, it's getting a little out of control.
Mm-hmm.
She's afraid of getting COVID, and did she touch it? Did she? And so, I mean, so what do you tell a parent, or what do you tell someone who has OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder? That's how you say it correctly?
Yes.
How do you help that person? What sort of tip do you give that person?
Well, I think that if they have obsessive compulsive disorder, like you're saying, if maybe this is new onset, or they were diagnosed with this previously, but they're showing signs and symptoms of it where they feel like it's excessive, like what would you tell them under those circumstances? Well, I think that definitely would be a reason to seek professional help. Yeah, because I think, in general, we consider symptoms consistent with a disorder if it impairs functioning in some way, because there's a lot of us walking around with a lot of kind of symptoms of something, right? And so, but it may not be actually rising to the level of disorder. And so for that to happen, it has to really impair your functioning in some way. So, for instance, I've seen a 9-year-old who has a bug phobia. Now, that might, be mildly impacting her if she just, can still go outside and can still have fun and go to picnic, and go to school, but she was not able to leave her house. So that's a good example of how this really significantly impaired her functioning, and she needed medical attention.
Wow.
So thinking about, depression was the other thing you said, combined with anxiety. A lot of people, I think, like you said, have some of the symptoms, right, of depression, and they will get out of their house, or they'll be around people so that they're not depressed. but now we have to stay in our house, right? How do we, deal with the isolation that comes along with this pandemic, and try and keep from falling into depression?
Yeah, that's a good question because we all are social beings. That's how we were made. And so that's a part of how we thrive is our connectedness, right? And I think this pandemic has forced us all to get very creative about ways to stay connected. And I think as the restrictions are loosened, it becomes a little bit easier. Um, so, for example, now we might be able to still meet up with a friend, at a restaurant for outdoor seating, or you
Yeah.
can have like a friends that, maybe two or three friends, and you can gather on the porch together, but previously, when it was complete shutdown, that made it tremendously difficult. But I tell people sometimes, I had to really think outside of the box. And I had a girlfriend who had a Zoom party for her birthday, and I was reluctant because I was like, it's not the same. We put so much into planning her birthday party, before the pandemic hit because her birthday was in March. And I was like, oh, I just don't know. But it actually turned out to be so much fun. Like we did like a contest for who could have like the best looking makeup and who could find the most number of objects in the purse, in a couple of seconds. And so I feel like, it challenges us, but if we think outside the box a little bit, we actually can still engage in different ways. So
Both
yeah.
Tasha and I have had virtual birthday parties.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We can't let it stop us, right? We just we have to find a way. And I think luckily we live in a time where we have FaceTime also and we can connect with people virtually. So I do encourage people to still do that. I mean, there's you can get burnout and you take a break from it as you need to, but I think in general it's still an avenue that allows us to still connect to people.
We have a couple of questions from our audience. Can I jump in, Sharon?
Go right ahead.
Okay, Sherry asks, how does the data differ overall for mental illness stats for African Americans versus the general market?
Oh, okay. So for overall, that's hard to say. When we were looking at the CDC data, it actually showed that minority ethnic groups, 18.6% of them revealed that they had increased mental health conditions. So when you think about the fact that, this is a minority population, that 18% is a significant amount. However, in terms of the actual percentage numbers for minorities compared to majority populations for mental health in general, that's hard to say.
And then a real quick follow-up, mental illness isn't talked about a lot in the Black community, and seeking therapy is not always seen as an option. How do we reframe this so our people see therapy as a viable option to help them for treatment or even preventive care?
Oh, that's an excellent question. So I think that we need to really look at our bodies as a whole integrated system. Like our head is not separate from everything, but from the neck down. And so for that reason, our mental health is a function of our brain health, and our brain and mental health connect very intimately with our somatic health. And so really, if first understand it that way, it's terribly, I think that would do a lot to kind of like end the stigma. And I think that what I do like is seeing more actors and professional ball players that are seen in the media that are normalizing it also to say that, hey, I actually go to a therapist and it's been beneficial. And I've seen this for not just Caucasian people, but for African American artists as well, which I really respect. And I think that goes a long way to kind of touch people from a mainstream perspective and tell us, hey, this is actually okay. And some of it also too is just let's like this kind of platform. Let's just be open. Let's talk and have a candid conversation about how I might be struggling, and the role that mental health can play in that, the role that mental health treatment can play in that. And it's certainly, if one has a good experience with a therapist or a doctor, share it.
Yeah.
Which is how you've come to join us today.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So no one is really prepared for this, right?
Mm-hmm.
One expected COVID to overtake our lives like this. Many of us thought like, oh, it's only going to be for a couple of weeks. I remember I had a girlfriend who said, girl, this will be over in 2 weeks. I was like, that. 7 months later,
Mm-hmm.
what, and this is not normal. So what is normal? What is normal for us to expect of ourselves and the people that we love? What is normal?
Oh my goodness. So I think that we can be expected to feel a host of emotions, right? I think that, sometimes people put on an alarm when they feel sad or when they cry, when it's okay. Like, it really is okay to cry and feel sad. You might feel a different range of emotions even within the course of a day or several hours. And I think that that's because you could feasibly get a phone call from someone who's not doing well, or you could look at the news and that could bring you down. But then, I think that it's important to acknowledge that these are unprecedented times.
Yeah.
And therefore, we are expected to have certain negative feelings about it, anxiety about it, sadness about it, frankly, anger about it. And that is okay. And I always tell people that, it's okay to feel, even if it's a negative, intense emotion. The issue is what you do with it, and the issue is acknowledge it, but don't stay there.
Yeah. Right. And I think it's important too to talk about it, right? I think it was last Sunday, I was crying. I was like, what is wrong with me? I got on the prayer line in the morning and I was so touched and I was crying. And then I watched something on TV that afternoon and I was crying. I was like, what is going on with me? But I talked to Sharon and I was just like, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe who knows? Maybe it was like all built up and that was just the way for it to come out.
Absolutely. And we're all connected. I feel like we are energetic beings too, right? And so we might notice that our energy is off personally, but then also collectively, as people, given multiple factors, our energies might be off, and that's related to multiple things. So for that reason, we may not be able to pinpoint exactly what it is underneath that is actually kind of shaking us up and stirring us up a little bit, but the key is to acknowledge it non-judgmentally, right? Without like labeling it, criticizing it, lamenting over it, adding a secondary negative emotion to it, and just allow, but just don't stay there. And we can talk about, how not to stay there, how not to wallow.
Okay, well let's talk about it. How do we allow ourselves? Because I hear people say, give yourself permission, give yourself allowance. Yes. But you could overdo it, right? Like, what does it really look like? What's a fair amount to allow yourself?
Okay. And that might look different for everybody. Everybody might have a different threshold. But I think certainly, if you take space, you feel that way, and you're feeling that way for a couple of days, but it's not impacting your relationships, and you're actively doing something to try to, shift your mood and your energy, then I think that that's totally normal. When you consider depression, for example, though, if you have enduring sadness for 2 weeks at least, or a lack of interest in things that you would typically enjoy, that actually would be more of a worrisome sign for depression. This is persistent sadness, hard to shake, or a lack of interest in things, or irritability. And it can be associated with other symptoms like changes in your sleep pattern and appetite. These kinds of signs and symptoms would be more worrisome. But I think that if you are allowing and giving yourself grace, and then but actively also trying to shift your mood state, and then you're effective in doing that with different strategies, that is totally okay.
One of the articles that we read when you talk about, doing things specifically to shift your mood and your state, it talked about having a routine to help keep your mental health in check, right? And so John and I were talking about that, and she was like, well, that doesn't sound good to me. It sounds like too regimented, right? On the other hand, it sounds great to me. Like, I think having a schedule keeps me sane, right? Because low key, like, I might lose it if my schedule don't go the way I plan. Right? But that's a whole other conversation. But low key. Like tips like that. Like, what does having a routine do for a person?
Right. So I think that, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that the experiences that both of you have are real. Like, having a routine doesn't necessarily initially resonate with everybody. But I think that some of the basics are super important. So, like, sleep and good sleep hygiene is so critical. Number one, because it really can influence mood states heavily. Everything from just being more irritable to actually maybe influencing depression, because too much sleep can be depressogenic, or even the opposite spectrum, not enough sleep can promote mania. So that's in the most extreme form. But even on just, a not so extreme form, you might notice that you feel off kilter when you haven't had enough sleep, had 6 to 8 hours of sleep. That's just kind of like one example. And you really promote balance and homeostasis in your body when you're going to bed at the same time usually and waking up at the same time. But then also water intake, that can be a part of kind of a regimen. And so I think that regular water intake, which we recommend a half an ounce to an ounce per pound of body weight, would actually go a long way also to promote balance. These things actually can influence hormones in our body, cortisol levels in our body, cytokines. These are things that influence inflammation and therefore impact disease. So you're right, Tasha. I have to say that on a very biological level, those kinds of things actually make sense. It doesn't have to be, that you're doing the exact same thing every day. But some of the basics definitely help in terms of staving off illness.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I would definitely agree with that. Lots of water. I don't believe in everything having to go into a calendar. I personally like a little bit more room in my calendar. But, so that we are seeing a lot of divorces happening now. And so again, I'm here for the practical tips. People who are, and I hate to say stuck in the house, but we are in many ways just kind of stuck in our houses. And there's a therapist that Tasha and I like, and we saw with Oprah. Tasha, what's the
Esther Perel?
Exactly, Esther Perel, right? And she is disasters are relationship accelerators. Is that it?
Yes, I love her. I love her work.
And so, can you talk about that? And what are some tips for people who are married, who are really, because we've seen a lot of divorces, and this is a tough time for folks.
I read a sobering statistic that divorce was up 34% during the time of the pandemic. I don't know the specifics on that in terms of like, by comparison, but this is just a quick stat that I saw recently. And so that's sobering to hear. The divorce rate is already high. I think that, one thing that I think makes it difficult and that contributes to divorce is really just not having the healthy outlets that we're used to having that would allow us to cope when things get heated in our relationships, right? And so that challenges those of us who are in relationships to really make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, for us and for our partners. I think that, healthy boundaries in a relationship are so important. Okay. And I definitely still am learning that. And I feel like for that reason, it can be difficult to really reestablish these boundaries in the relationship through something so catastrophic and where you don't really have much distance and space.
Yeah.
Um, I think that as we talked about the importance of showing yourself grace and showing your partner grace, because this is a sensitive time, it's so critical for the benefit of a relationship. That's a big word.
Yeah.
Um,
Great.
that yes, it's so necessary.
Mhm.
It's a gift that we give to ourselves and that we give to others, and it goes a long way in relationships because those subtle annoyances, those things that weren't those that were very subtle before, are going to be speaking loud and clear during this time when you're just together all the time. But also, you might be more impacted because you're more sensitive, because you're more irritable, because of these times. And communication is key also.
Being more
But
sensitive and irritable over here.
yes, well, me too. Sometimes I just think that's totally understandable and real. And I think talking it out, this is a time where it's really calling for us to be able to speak our truths. In love, though, in love, right?
Yeah.
Um, because they can't read our minds and vice versa. So having that healthy communication, which is a whole nother topic, but
Yeah.
I think that goes a long way too. Take some breaks. It's okay. It is okay to take a little break too, and get outside the house for a second. You know, read a book outside, take in the fresh air. Whatever the case may be. I've noticed that, and this is just for me, but just by virtue of getting outside of the house in open space, it tells me it's like an immediate physical reminder that my problem is not as big as I think it is. And when I'm
Wow.
in the house, it feels like it's all consuming.
Yeah.
Right.
But when you step outside of the house and you see the sky and the trees and you realize there's a greater world, greater things going on, it's really not that big. I don't know, it just gives me instant perspective. So each person has that thing that allows them to get that perspective and say, you know what, maybe I can let that go.
Yeah. Dr. Howell, you're also a mom.
Oh, yes.
Um, I'm interested in your perspective on our kids right now. Kids are
Mhm.
fairly resilient, so I've heard, so I understand. But how might this extended time of, without socialization be
Mhm.
hurtful for them?
Yeah. So I can speak as a mom and a child psychiatrist. So it can have an impact. I mean, first, I do want to highlight the positive. I mean, our kids are so resilient. I'm learning that in my work because, in checking in with patients regularly, throughout the pandemic, I've been really surprised with the level of resilience of the children that I treat. They are making it work. They
That's great.
are they're getting creative when they need to. Um, they're still doing things. Um, they're not necessarily suffering as much as I thought that they might.
Okay.
Um, yes, I do feel like anxiety being one of the most common things that we treat in child psychiatry, that we're definitely seeing more of that now, for sure. But overall, the level of resilience is amazing and beautiful to see. Um, but I do think that they have more screen time. And I
Mm.
think that the screen time can be a challenge, in terms of, the possible negative effects of screen time, but all the effects of screen time are not negative, though. Um, and yes, absolutely, because they're little adults. They also need socialization just as much as I do. I check in with them every time we meet about what are they doing to be social and encouraging them to maintain the level of social contact. And they'll say, okay, Dr. Howell, I talked to my best friend on FaceTime for. I was able to get back into tennis now since they loosened the restrictions, and I made a new group of friends. So
Good.
I had a Zoom party, or I just talk to my friends via FaceTime every night. My best friend. I've had child patients start a business in the context
Wow.
of
Nice.
the pandemic. Oh my goodness. I could put in a
Yeah.
little plug, in a second. but but I have been amazed. She took this experience and said, well, since I'm home, I'm going to start a jewelry business. And I'm so proud of her. So
Wonderful.
yeah, so this is what I mean. So yes, and while she does struggle with more anxiety, for sure,
Yeah.
uh, it still is that she's able to, on the positive side, still continue to do the work, the therapy that she's super engaged in and is getting better, but also just grab life, you know,
Yeah.
thrive.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. All right. So, Doc, do you have any advice for, say, grandparents who are separated from their grandchildren, right? I know in my family alone, we have grandparents in different states and they've not been able to see their grandchildren. And also, I mean, just having family, you could be on another state from your family. What are tips that you have for them?
Yeah, so that's really hard. I know I really struggled with missing my mom, and she missed my children so much. My mom and dad, during the time when we were completely on lockdown. Um, so the other thing that's a challenge there is that a lot of times our elders are not as savvy depending on with technology, and I think
Right.
that is a challenge. Um, and so I think that while definitely, you can get together with them um, we actually, for my mother's birthday, just still drove to DC and kind of did like a drive by and came out in the yard. And it took a lot of effort from my 4-year-old to not run up to her and give her a hug, but we all sang happy birthday in the yard and gave her gifts. And so I think that while she really wanted to reach out and touch and hug, I think that part was kind of sad, but it was still important to acknowledge her birthday and to still give her gifts. And I think that in ways that you can still do that, that's important. Um, again, being creative and thinking outside the box, I said, what if I got a Polaroid camera and we just went to pen and paper and just old fashioned wrote letters to each other and then just took Polaroid pictures and sent updated photos, for those that can't, get the photo on their phone, why
Yeah.
not?
Why
Polaroid.
not? I like that idea. I think that's a great idea.
I think it's just about really thinking outside of the box, and being creative and trying to connect.
Yeah.
Nice. I know my parents miss their grandkids a whole lot. But
Mhm.
I'm lucky in my family that we are, connected, and so we're able to share pictures and that and FaceTime and that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
So let's talk about single people. There are some people out there that, haven't touched a warm body in months, right? Even just the embrace of a friend or a mother or a family member, right? That can be difficult for single people. Do you have any advice for them? It might be difficult to date right now, or they have, more feelings of loneliness than other people might have. What advice
Mhm.
would you give them?
So that is hard. I definitely can say that the rules around dating, and I have like 2 teenage children who one of whom I know is dating. And so um, we have to have talks about this. How do you date safely in the era of COVID? Um, so I met my husband online. So hey, online is still a good option. I think it is a feasible option. Um, I think that when it's time to meet up in person, obviously there's certain things that have to be paid attention to and still using the precautions that are recommended. But this is a chance maybe to see what people have got, how creative again people are going to get. can we think outside of the box about maybe some dates that actually would allow us to connect but still be outside? I mean, as the weather gets cold, that's definitely more of an issue. But I think it just challenges us to really get creative again. I mean, and think of dates that really are a little bit not so traditional and not so the usual,
Right.
outside of online dating. When the weather is nice, a picnic with appropriate social distancing. But you think about, like, even it might impact when someone might decide to have a first kiss. Like, that I thought about, and how that's really a tough thing to navigate
Mm-hmm.
in the dating world. It's a part of the excitement of dating someone. And so is that okay? Knowing that obviously you're putting someone at risk, and then you might be coming home and putting your family at risk. So thank God tests are more widely available now.
Yeah.
And, in terms of really asking the appropriate questions about how they are exercising the precautions that are recommended when you do meet someone. Are they doing it responsibly? And I guess, also, have you been tested? Have you had symptoms?
That's the have you been tested question coming very early in the relationship nowadays,
Very,
right? I mean, the have you been tested, we kind of know what that question is about, but now it's
yes, a little
very
different.
early in the relationship.
Very early. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
I made it funny. Do you have any other questions from our audience? Sandra's definitely been weighing in. Thank you. She says she loves Esther Perel as well, and that her little one is getting way more screen time. Mine are too, Sandra.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, it's true. It's hard with the balance.
I think the last group, we kind of tried to cover questions for demographics. We didn't cover the working parent, who's also trying to do homeschooling, who's also trying to, be a spouse, right? Because it could be the mother or the father who's also, holding down an accountability partner or a brother or a sister, or, you're wearing many hats, as we most times always do, but now it's way more intensified, right? Like how does that person keep balance and, step away, like you said?
Yeah, so this is definitely a time where we need to embrace our spirituality. That's super important. That needs to be a part, I think, more and more these days, of the basics. And that can, that's different for everybody. It's highly personal. Um, it could be just on one level, just being able to understand our energy. Um, but that means tuning in, and it means that we have to take that time every day to pour into ourselves. And that is so tough, right? Because we might hear that as mothers, working professional mothers, wives, sisters, whatever, and say, well, how? Like, how are we going to do that?
Yeah.
But I think that the more emphasis you place on making sure that that happens, the better the chances are that you're not going to end up feeling more stressed and burned out. And so it may be stressful to think about it, but if you actually do it on the front end, it can make a huge difference. So it might mean 15 minutes before bed, or even if it means waking up a little bit earlier while the house is quiet, before husband is up or children are up. To just take that minute to yourself, whether it's to meditate, to pray, to have that cup of coffee uninterrupted, to draw, whatever it is that brings you joy and
Yeah.
peace. That's so important. And I also want to say it's super important to pay attention to our bodies. Our bodies speak, and they speak in subtle ways. And I think that it could be just, oh, while you're watching CNN, you might have a little pain in your neck, and you're thinking, what is my body telling me right now? Slow down enough to listen to what your body is saying. Maybe it's saying, I've been tuned into CNN a little too much lately. Maybe I need to take a break from CNN
Right.
and go on and actually take a hot shower, or have a cup of tea, or whatever the case may be. But our bodies speak, and we notice it most when they're speaking loud, when illness is already manifested.
Yeah.
But I've learned from the art of the healing practice of Reiki in particular, the mind-body connection and the importance of listening to our body when it speaks and acting on it early.
Yep.
Wow.
There's another question from the audience. What advice would you have for Black nurses on the front lines about mental health and seeking help?
Well, I would have the same message that I have to everyone, but even I would just more strongly emphasize it for minority women and also for professionals who are in a helping field and on the front line. I don't think that it really hurts to just go ahead and engage in therapy, even if there is no major problem. Like, therapy can be helpful and beneficial, even just to maybe say, hey, I just really want someone that can be a neutral party that I can kind of talk some of these things out with. Maybe even just learn a little bit more about myself. It doesn't have to be. So many times we wait until it's glaring.
Right.
But we don't have to do that. And so I think that now more than ever, our first responders and minorities as a whole might benefit from considering therapy before there's even ever an issue. I actually re-engaged in therapy since the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm going to be, first of all, I identify as an empath. Therefore, talk about the collective and my energy being impacted by everyone. If I don't know how to manage that, then I'm taking on the energy of everyone who I treat.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to manage that, but I also, definitely as a safeguard, felt like it would be helpful if I just kind of re-engage in therapy. So that would be my strong message.
Yeah. Tasha, do we have any more questions out there?
That's it for now.
All right. So, Dr. Howell, we have come, first of all, I've absolutely enjoyed our conversation.
I have too.
You have helped, I hope, a lot of people. You have certainly helped Tasha and I as we will continue to show each other grace.
Yes. And yourself.
We will show each other grace, but we have come to the point of just a little fun part of our AQ chat where we do an inside the actor studio. It's this, Tasha does this, so she'll ask you 11 questions, and I'm gonna send it to my accountability partner. Go ahead, Tasha.
All right, these are just rapid fire questions. All right, what's your favorite word?
Love.
What's your least favorite word?
Hate.
All right, what turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Oh boy. So artistically, I love the visual arts. Oh my goodness. I love drawing and painting and I can get into that. Spiritually, just connecting with God, that is always, I'm always looking for opportunities to do that, whether it's through nature or talking to God, directly. So.
All right. What turns you off?
Arrogance.
What's your favorite curse word?
Shit.
What sound or noise do you love?
Say that again.
What sound or noise do you love?
The sound of moving water.
Okay. What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh man, people chewing. Oh my goodness. I know that's a common one. There's actually a term for that called misophonia. But have that, but that would be mine for sure.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Interior design or interior decorating.
Okay.
Oh my God, if I ever jump ship, that would be where I would go.
All right. What profession would you not like to try?
Oh, podiatry.
All right. Who or what holds you accountable?
Ooh, you know, my own conscience and conviction around God's word, and then my children and my husband.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. And if you believe in heaven, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well done, my good and faithful servant.
Amen.
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 Yes.
All right.
Well, Dr. Howell, I'm going to put your contact information up. You all can see that's Dr. Howell. If you need and you feel you need support or help, Dr. Howell is an amazing doctor. You see her email up there and her phone number. I'm not even going to try to read it because I don't have my glasses on. You know, this 25 years old is hard out here. I'm not even going to play like I can see it. So, Dr. Howell, we appreciate you joining us. And as always, you can follow Tasha and I, the Accountability Queens, on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Join us next week. We'll have someone else really great. We'll tell you later on in the week who it's going to be. Dr. Howell, thank you again. Tasha, you know I'm going to see you sooner than later.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yes,
Dr. Howell. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
absolutely. Thank you for having me, ladies. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.